Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. Great to have you here with me. Thank you so much for joining today. Oh, my, we have a lot going on. The Democrat debate is tonight, so that's exciting for some people. I don't even know if it's exciting for the Democrats. But I'll be watching. I'll be live tweeting, a combination of insight and snark, so there's that to look forward to. We have a couple of big news stories breaking today. I left this out of our little open there, but we found Hunter Biden, or rather, one of the broadcast networks, I think it's ABC, found Hunter Biden. And he's not doing himself any favors. We'll discuss that. We'll hear a bit from Hunter himself. Oh, the most wayward of Bidens, it would seem, Hunter Biden. But the one thing that's gotten everybody really fired up today is this LeBron James situation. Now, I'm sure all of you know without me telling you, but just to put it in the proper context, LeBron James is arguably the best basketball player who has ever lived. Some of the Michael Jordan fans out there are booing right now, but you know what I mean. LeBron James is a big deal. The guy is certainly worth hundreds of millions of dollars, probably already close to, if not surpassing, $1 billion. He is a global sports icon, and he was really anointed as one of the biggest athletes, most important athletes in the world back when he was in high school. And he lived up to those expectations, which usually doesn't seem to be the case. So LeBron James is somebody who has a tremendous audience, a huge platform, is wealthy beyond any normal person's wildest imagination. He's also someone who is woke. He's an individual who, depending on the day, will share his thoughts on politics, particularly issues that deal with, say, police violence and other assorted and sundry things out there that he will have to continue to look at, I'm sure, now that people are going to be focusing even more on the issues of the day that he tackles. But LeBron James is a guy who talks about things in the political realm. And I had mentioned on this show a week ago, I had mentioned that it would be great if LeBron James would come forward and say something in support of the supporters of the protesters in Hong Kong. It would be great if LeBron James stepped forward and decided to speak in favor of freedom, right? So he's spoken about Black Lives Matter. He's spoken about police violence. He's spoken about different issues here. So this is an opportunity, given what happened. As we know, you had the general manager of the Houston Rockets who criticized gently, really, or didn't even criticize the Chinese. He just spoke in support of the Hong Kong protesters. And what did LeBron James decide to do? I asked last week, I said, where's LeBron? Where's the king? Where's the man himself? Perhaps the single most famous, most powerful figure in professional sports today. You could certainly make that argument. The NBA is all about weighing in on politics, telling us how woke they are. We know that they will protest. They'll support people protesting the national anthem, support taking a knee during our national anthem. They'll wear hoodies in solidarity with Trayvon Martin, all these different very political acts. And LeBron himself had even at one point, I'm trying to find this tweet, LeBron had shown everybody just actually how truly woke he is. Here you go. This is from, I think from earlier this year, LeBron James. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Wow. Bold talk, strong words from King James, as he is widely known. But then he decided to speak on the China issue, and my, oh my, it was a disaster. Hit it.
We all talk about this freedom of speech. Yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So I don't believe, I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl. with Daryl Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke. And so many people could have been harmed, not only financially, but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet and we say and what we do, even though, yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too.
Wow. LeBron James, a man who will never have to worry about putting food on the table, not just for himself or his family, but his family's family, based on the amount of money he has amassed. A global icon who's in no danger of losing his job or anything. He could have just not said anything about this. I asked last week, I said, LeBron is woke. He is social justice aware. Now's the opportunity for him to take a stand for people who could really use it. And by the way, the Chinese market is huge for the NBA, but Chinese support, Hong Kongers' support for NBA players like LeBron is also very, very strong. It would have meant a lot, just some words of solidarity. But instead of that, what did we get? LeBron James saying that Morey, the general manager of the Houston Rockets, was not educated on the issue when he said that he was in support of freedom for the people of Hong Kong. Oh no, quite the contrary. I think the Houston Rockets GM was right on the money, and I think that people understand that. And Daryl Morey did exactly the right thing from a moral, ethical perspective. You could say from a business perspective it wasn't a good idea, but LeBron James comes forward to show us that all that social justice stuff, it's easy to take a knee in the United States. It's easy to, and don't even get me started on Colin Kaepernick. The guy's a backup quarterback. He's at a point in his career where his value as a professional player is just not what it once was. And all of a sudden he takes a knee, and now he's like a Nike superstar. He's a sports icon. Forget about the fact that he wore the socks with pig police officers on them. We're just supposed to skip past that. Oh, he's a sports icon, all right. LeBron James, best basketball player in the world right now, criticizes the guy who's speaking out in favor of freedom in Hong Kong and claims that he is not. I believe Morey has if we're going to talk about being educated on the issue, not that this means he necessarily knows all that much about what's going on in Hong Kong, but I think it's a good shot. First of all, he was right with his tweet. And Morey, I think, went to MIT. So I have a pretty good, I'm going to guess that he has a good sense of what's going on. I think he has an advanced degree from MIT. I think Morey has a good sense of what's going on in the Hong Kong situation. A lot of people are very disappointed in LeBron James right now. I would say, let's be serious about this, folks. Is it really a surprise? Is it really a surprise that professional athletes who have the option, as far as I'm concerned, to avoid politics and just be professionals in what they do and share their opinions privately, but to use their public platform for political issues, that opens them up. That means now that anybody's allowed to have an opinion, anyone's allowed to decide that they will criticize what these players have to say. So LeBron James shows us whether he's really brave or not, and unfortunately came up quite short. And it also makes a lot of people question, what about all these athletes who are talking about justice and the need for fighting for what's right? And well, that's all good when fighting for justice means you sell even more sneakers. You sell even more jerseys and tickets. But what about the consequences, the economic consequences of fighting for justice when it's hard? Oh, I see. The NBA has been telling players not to speak on this issue. LeBron James speaks out on this issue and says exactly the wrong thing. He had a week to figure out what the response was going to be, and this is what he comes up with. But there's a bigger issue here. It's not just about LeBron James and the NBA, although should we really have expected more? I leave that to you. China, which is a situation that President Trump has been tackling from the beginning of his presidency. We have a different feeling about how to deal with China now going forward than we did in the past because of Trump. China has tremendous influence over decisions that, my friends, are affecting you and me right now. China has control over parts of the media narrative here in America. And really, there can be no better example of just how culturally and economically influential China is than to have a globally famous NBA superstar bend the knee to Beijing's Communist Party for fear of losing out on the almighty dollar. That sends a very strong message, doesn't it? And it sends a message, I think, also about what our future is going to be unless we wake up and accept that this is not going to be easy. Just like the trade fight that Trump has started is not easy. The fight for the truth about China, what's going on inside of China, what that country is doing around the world, that's going to become increasingly complicated. Journalists like to talk about how brave they are. Celebrities always think that they're brave when they take political stands, but most of them are just idiots. But journalists think that they're brave until all of a sudden ownership has a different feeling about things. Then it changes rather rapidly, doesn't it? How does China influence us? How far does that influence go? Oh, we'll get to that. So how powerful and influential is communist China when it comes to pop culture? We've seen we've seen that they can influence the NBA. We've seen that they can tell people what they can and cannot say in this country, even when they're incredibly wealthy and incredibly influential. Where else does this extend? Well, some people picked up on a very big change recently in the new Top Gun movie, for example. In that Top Gun movie, you will recall, well, in the original Top Gun movie, Tom Cruise has a bomber jacket on, and on the back of that bomber jacket is a flag that is the flag of Taiwan. And that all of a sudden, in the new version, was changed to a different flag. And a lot of people noticed this. Now, why would that happen? Because the biggest movie market, at least by ticket sales in the world, is the Chinese market. It's also why, unfortunately, we have all these horrifically bad superhero movies. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Bad superhero movies that are made all the time. That's right, Mark. You know I'm right. Don't give me that. This isn't like an old man thing. This is a truth thing.
You are very, very incorrect.
Yeah. They make them this way because they can dub Thor and the Hulk going, Hulk smash, and the same thing in every movie, and people in foreign countries will watch it. Doesn't
Incorrect.
matter. Yeah, well, who are you going to believe? Anyway, they change things because the Chinese government censors will block movies. Most recent example of this, I mentioned Top Gun, so that's a U.S. movie. But there's a movie that's a joint animated project of DreamWorks, the famous, animated and I forget what they even call it. The digital, essentially makes the digital cartoons that people know and love. It's done very, very well as a company. DreamWorks made this movie called Abominable, which I've been thinking for a while, when is someone going to make a movie? But I was thinking a horror movie. As you know, I like Bigfoot movies. We've talked about that on the show before. I think there should be more of them, and they should be better. And not Harry and the Hendersons. I don't want a big, happy, cuddly Bigfoot. But the movie Abominable is about a cute, cuddly cartoon Yeti, which some of you think of, I think, as a cooler company, right? Don't they make the coolers? The little where you put the beer and the things. Yeah? I know America. But also, this movie is about traversing across China, and this young girl is with the Bigfoot, has to take him back to, I guess, to Mount Everest, I think it is. And sure enough, Vietnam is very upset because guess what DreamWorks did in this movie in order to make sure that as a joint venture with the Chinese, it would get approved by the censors. Oh, they showed the South China Sea, the 7-dash line, the South China Sea. They showed that as Chinese territory. And the only reason that they would do this, the only reason that this would happen is because they want to make sure they can get around the censors. I'm sorry, the 9 dash. I said the 7 dash line, 9 dash line. Pardon me. Is that they want to get around the upset of the Chinese government. This is happening now all the time. There was a DJ, I believe, recently, a famous DJ, which is still an amazing thing to me that even exists. I feel like I could be a famous DJ. I'll make a playlist. I will put it up on Spotify or iTunes, and I will hit play. And I will then be a famous. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I guess you got to mix the beats and do all that stuff. I'm hip. I know what the kids do. So I got to mix all the beats with all the flavor. But this guy's a famous DJ. He tweeted something about China, and now the Chinese government has banned him for life as a result of this. I'm trying to see if I can remember who exactly it was. Some of you might know DJ Zed banned. I'm sorry, and he was banned for liking a South Park tweet on Twitter. South Park's one of the few comedic enterprises that will still make fun of things you're not supposed to make fun of, which is wonderful. It's a very important part of society these days. There have to be people willing to make the jokes that you're not supposed to make, or else why are we making jokes at all? But DJ Zed liked a tweet from South Park about making fun of China, and now he's banned forever. You're going to see more of this. People who speak out against China's policy in Hong Kong, who are famous, are going to get banned. In fact, even people who aren't very famous might get banned. It just won't be a news story. It took me months to get a visa to be able to go to China. The whole ex-CIA, current news media person thing didn't really sit that well with the Communist Party, apparently. This is a big fight, my friends. This is going to continue. This shows you what kind of influence China has. We're not worried about invasion. We're worried about bending the knee culturally and economically. Welcome back, Team Buck. I wanted to bring in an additional voice here on LeBron James, China, the NBA, Hong Kong, all the stuff that we've been talking about today so far on the show. We have Clay Travis with us now. He is a nationally syndicated radio host and author of the book, Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, which is definitely true. I'm a Republican. I buy sneakers. Clay, thanks for coming on.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
All right, so let's start with this. You wrote a piece for Outkick the Coverage where you lay out that, I was saying this at the start, you follow sports very closely, and sports in the intersection of politics. I do politics, and occasionally when sports happens to cross over into my world. But you take the position in your piece that LeBron James has been heralded as someone akin to the greatness of Muhammad Ali, not just as a sports figure, but as a political figure. And you think that's unwarranted. Tell us why.
Well, because he's never really taken a stand on anything that matters. By what I mean there, when you look at Muhammad Ali's history, the man faced imprisonment. He stood up to the idea of a draft. He stood up to the idea of a war. And as a result, he suffered severe consequences. But he took a stand on an issue that was dividing the country in a major way. LeBron has never taken a stand in any way. And that's why I wrote last week that this China situation offered an opportunity for LeBron James. You know this because you hear it all the time. There's much talk about being on the right side of history. And for anybody, I'm a history major. I'm a longtime history buff. Anybody who's spent any time studying history knows that very often the idea that there's a right and wrong side of history that is going to be determined during your life is often incorrect. Sometimes it takes hundreds of years to figure out exactly who was on the right and wrong side of history. And biographies will consistently debate that for many different issues. But we know that the right side of history bends in the direction of democracy, freedom of speech, human rights. Basic individual freedoms are, without a doubt, on the right side of history. So LeBron James had an opportunity here to stand up to China and say, I believe that the 1.4 billion people who live in China are entitled and should have the same exact rights that I do in America today. I believe in democracy. I believe in capitalism. I believe in something as important as that. And if he had done so, that could be a crucible moment down the line for his legacy. But in the meantime, you know that in the long range, he's going to be, I believe, on the right side of history because the winds of societal change bend towards the directions of capitalistic democracies. Instead, he chose to shut up and dribble and take communist dictator money. And if he had only been a capitalist, if that's all he cared about or all the NBA had cared about, I don't think this hypocrisy would be striking so many as being so rank, so glaring, so difficult to stomach.
Now, do you think that LeBron James? I mean, look, personally, it feels like financial pressure from China on him personally is that would be tough. I mean, any financial pressure on him is going to be a tough thing, or you could at least argue would be a difficult thing to pull off. How much pressure can the Chinese put on the NBA? I mean, for someone like me, I like basketball. I like the NBA. I haven't watched a game probably in 5 years. So tell me, how big a deal is it for China to start to slap down and either particular NBA players or just NBA access into the Chinese market?
Well, I think it's a fascinating question. And one answer I would imagine that China can sort of hint at is we don't have to pay you for the rights to your games. We can do what we've done with a lot of Western products, which is allow rampant piracy to occur in this country, such that we don't have to pay you anything substantial for your rights. And the people who are NBA fans in China, we can make it available to them without going after the pirates and everything else associated with that. But I think what you're hitting at is the key is all of China's power in this scenario is derived from financial related issues. And so the biggest thing that is disappointing to me, I think, about LeBron in general is, I don't know what your dollar figure is, but I've pretty much reached it where if you told me I could make 20% more, but I had to say things that I disagreed with in order to make that 20% more, I wouldn't do it, right? I mean, my intellectual honesty is worth a lot more to me than 20% more. Now, I worked as a lawyer, so if you told me, hey, I'll pay you 100 times as much, I might be willing to argue for anybody, right? I've defended murderers. I've defended rapists. That's part of the job, right? But for what we do to be in the marketplace of ideas and be selling something I didn't believe in, it's really disappointing to think that the sellout dollar figure would only be about 20% more for somebody like LeBron, especially if you've already made hundreds of millions of dollars. And by the way, especially if you've made those hundreds of millions of dollars at the fount of democratic capitalism, to turn your back on that in exchange for platitudes from your communist dictator leaders is, to me, really disappointing and essentially blows up LeBron James's argument that he's more than an athlete or that he refuses to shut up and dribble.
Why did he go after Maury specifically? That seemed, not only was LeBron wrong on this, he seemed to really be doing the bidding of the Chinese. I mean, if the Chinese government had written his talking points, I mean, I think Xi Jinping said, anyone who stands in our way in Hong Kong, we will annihilate them and grind their bones to dust. So, okay, so Xi goes a little more to the mat on this stuff than even anybody in the NBA would, fine. But if they were trying to write plausible talking points for somebody in the NBA, I think it would include Maury doesn't understand the situation. I think that's one of the ways to undermine the tweet that got this whole ruckus started. So why do you think LeBron went after Maury? Is there any personal beef there? I mean, these are things that I wouldn't know that you would know.
Well, first of all, I think you're right in claiming that this is a complicated issue. He followed up on what Steve Kerr said last week, which was, it's almost impossible to come up with an opinion on a situation like this, when the reality is pretty straightforward. You're either in favor of democratic protesters in Hong Kong or you're opposed to them, and you believe in autocratic Chinese rule of an authoritarian nature, or you don't. This is not so many issues that we confront on a daily basis in American life where, okay, let's figure out how the Second Amendment is going to apply in 2019. Okay, I can see how that could be complicated and there could be a variety of different issues. To me, what Daryl Morey said in terms of endorsing democracy is the equivalent of saying cancer is bad, right? I mean, I'm sure there's one or two people out there who are like, cancer's underrated in my opinion. But in general, this is like, I'm in favor of clean drinking water. I'm in favor of kids having the opportunity to go to school and get an education for free. These are not controversial ideas in general. So I think you're right. I think that LeBron has used Daryl Morey as a target because, one, it was his tweet that set off this firestorm in China, but also because I believe LeBron is trying to make this issue seem more complicated than it is, and also make Morey seem less understanding of this situation. And by the way, really what LeBron is doing, in addition to echoing communist talking points, is he's echoing one of the NBA owners, who is Joseph Tsai, I believe is how you pronounce his name, but the Alibaba guy who now owns the Nets. It sounds like he sat down with LeBron and tried to brainwash him.
And he's the guy who wrote that Facebook post, right, about
yes,
China's
right.
China's history and the territorial integrity and how sensitive it is, and it was some real whiny nonsense.
Yeah, and it also essentially told Americans that we shouldn't be concerned with democracy around the world, and that's the big issue here, I think, Buck. Right? When you really break it down, is China has moved from a country that was, hey, you want to show you the new Avengers movie? Well, we need you to cut these 2 minutes out in order to play in China. And Disney and all the big companies acquiesced to those demands to get into the Chinese market. What they have now started to do, and I think this is an interesting pivot point for China, is they are arguing now, American company, we don't care that your citizens have the right under American law to have First Amendment freedoms and say what they have said. If you want to do business with us, you need to police your employees outside of the bounds of our country with what they are saying and doing. And that, to me, is a big step by China outside of their territory.
Right. That is a really important point, by the way. This isn't, if you're going to come into our house, it's our rules. It's, you better do things in your house that we want you to, or else you'll never be welcome in our house.
Yeah, this is a big difference, right? I mean, it's the difference between and again, I don't know that a lot of people have noticed this, but that's why I think this is such a larger battle on the grand scale and why LeBron's decision here is so disappointing. If you believe, as I do, that much of the 21st century is likely to be maybe a new Cold War, however you want to define it, between America and China, the question is, do you believe in a communist, authoritarian government's vision for the 21st century as it expands beyond its territorial borders and begins to try to influence the world? Or do you believe in the vision of a capitalistic democracy like the United States and many of our allies? And LeBron James has effectively said, I believe in the communist dictatorship vision. And that is why this is so disappointing, because I think we're starting to see the early shots being fired in a global war of ideas, and LeBron has come down on the side of the Chinese.
Clay Travis, everybody. The book is Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. I actually have a copy. Highly recommend you all go out and get one. He's also a nationally syndicated radio host. You can check out his podcast. Clay, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, my man. You got a great show. I hear great things about it. Look forward to seeing you at Politicon here in a few weeks.
Thanks so much, man. See you there. Well, I'm glad we managed to cover the LeBron James, China, Hong Kong controversy today, because I think that it really is, and I agree with what our guest there, Clay Travis, said. I think this is just going to continue to get worse. I don't think that there's going to be any reprieve here, and the Chinese, their leverage is only going to become more potent as time goes on, unless we start to see this for what it is and push back. And the Chinese have been playing a long game here. They have these Confucius centers that they fund all across America. These Confucius centers create this perception of a China that many people argue is just not, and the way that China approaches the rest of the world, it's meant to lull us into a sense that the Chinese have no ambitions beyond their own territory and just want to be good trading partners, and they want prosperity for their people and peace around the world. A lot of very powerful propaganda. In fact, I believe that the China People's Daily, the China Daily, which is a publication approved by the People's Republic of China, was for a time being added to the Washington Post when it was delivered to people's homes some years ago as a special advertising bulletin kind of. It's propaganda. The Washington Post was like, yeah, we'll take Chinese money and distribute propaganda all over the world. So that's been going on. And then with LeBron James, yeah, I'm not surprised really. And the more I think about it, the more sense it makes that this is a tough issue for the NBA in that there will be consequences. It's not tough to know which side to be on, but it's tough as in you could actually have some bad things happen if you speak out against the Chinese. Nothing bad's going to happen to anybody in the NBA for wearing a hoodie in solidarity with Trayvon or tweeting out about social justice or saying that, Colin Kaepernick should be supported in his self-indulgent protest movement, all that stuff, all of it, right? That's easy. In fact, that's brand enhancing. And you've seen that now. Some of the more social justice aware things that or involve things that Nike has done, like putting Kaepernick on, I forget, we're starting a campaign with him. I forget what it's called. It's like the equivalent of putting him on a Wheaties box. He's now a big sports hero for Nike. That has resulted in an increase in sales. So there's really a financial upside. Not only does it not hurt them to take these stands in the NBA, there's a financial upside to it. Certainly a huge upside for Colin Kaepernick. But you don't want to listen to celebrities in general on these issues because, you should just listen to people who are knowledgeable and intelligent. So if a celebrity happens to be knowledgeable and intelligent on an issue, of course. But being a celebrity does not mean, as all of you know, it means you are neither knowledgeable nor intelligent on its face. You could be, but it doesn't mean you are. And another example is, Jane Fonda still out there. Hanoi Jane still doing her thing. People listen. Media gives her airtime. Here she is. Just in case you haven't heard enough scaremongering on climate change, let's hear from non-scientist, I would argue non-book reader, Jane Fonda, about climate change. Play clip 7, please.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Crisis told us last year that we only have, last year they said 12 years, now it's 11 years. We have 11 years left to try to turn this fossil fuel disaster around so that we don't completely pass the tipping point and it becomes untenable to govern, untenable to have a stable economy or any kind of human rights or anything. There's just going to be one disaster on top of the other. But we do have time. We have time, and it's going to require that people in every country all around the world organize and mobilize, and if necessary, bring governments to a halt if we can't make them do the right thing. It wouldn't have to be this radical and fundamental if the fossil fuel industry hadn't lied to us for 30 years.
Fossil fuel disaster. That's interesting because what she refers to as a disaster, you could also look at as an objective observer and historian and see that fossil fuels have directly, not just coincided with, but created the economic conditions for more prosperity, longer lifespan, easier lives, better lives around the world than any other series of scientific advances in human history. You do not have modern capitalism without fossil fuels. You don't have it. It doesn't exist. You do not have this modern world of technological wonders that we all live in. But now the left in this country and much of it around the world has embraced this hatred of fossil fuels. They're the enemy. They're going to kill us all, they say. Oh, and also the claim that we should bring governments to a halt. There are few people as clownish and stupid as the protesters against climate change, the protesters who are climate change activists against fossil fuels. In recent weeks, you've seen things, they've spray painted buildings red, they do all this crazy idiocy. I almost don't want to ever call them protesters. People in Hong Kong taking truncheons to the face, getting sprayed and hit with rubber bullets and tear gas and standing up for basic human rights. Those are protesters. These climate change activists, they're really just engaged in a kind of self-indulgent virtue signaling theater. Jane Fonda's a part of it.